Thank you to our 4 sponsors for supporting our podcast: Johnny Russell's Art Caterers and Milktown Pies, Alexander Great's Law, Jez and Lisa's Spoonful of Sweets, and SPE Furnishings. Links to their websites are available in the show notes and on our website. Don't forget to subscribe to get all the latest episodes as soon as they're released.
But, you know, I didn't think we were, you know, it was by any means, you know, the way the season had gone that we were out of it. So it was just a case of, you know, get back in. Charlie's in. Let's get another partnership. Let's try and, you know, work it around again. I mean, just to step in a little bit, you know, when you were talking about 230 not being, you know, like a massive score. Obviously, we've won 4 Worsley Cups now.
Yeah.
And that's the highest score in the Worsley Cup finals that we've played. Yeah. You know, we've had...
Oh, cracker.
You know, we've batted first and got 180 against Church and won. We've batted second against Burnley when they've got 160. And we've just crept over the line. And, you know, what did we get this year, Joe? 230? Did we get 230 this year? Or 220?
I think it was 230 from memory.
Yeah.
It might have even been a little...
You take your time, Joe.
Will do. No problem.
I'll fill in.
I usually can remember stuff like this. This is ludicrous.
I'll fill in.
Blez, we got 254.
Right. So that, you know, that was, you know, completely and utterly incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah.
At the end of that innings, you know, but it looked like when I went in that, you know, 210 would have been a great score for us.
Yeah.
And we managed to get 250. So, you know, really, you know, like 230 in a cup final, we've always said, you know, runs on the board is hard to chase down in any cup final.
Well, I'm going to say it's the cup final, it's the pressure. The professionals have been there, have played in front of crowds. Amateurs who've been around a long time and won umpteen trophies, it must get easier. But for us, you're right, you know, it just appeared a little bit less than I remember it was. So Peter's out, Charlie's coming in. We are now 70 for 3. Peter's on his way out. I don't think there's any sign of any rain that's going to come at this stage. And you too, I think, you know, I'm going to bring you in, Charlie, and ask you just what your thoughts were when you first came in. But it's quite remarkable how similar it was in the building blocks for the innings of the way you work the ball around. You know, didn't look like you were going to get run out. You know, turning 2s into 3s, 1s into 2s. It looked very calm once you'd got yourself in. How did you feel when you came out, Charlie, and how did that innings develop?
A little bit nervous, to be honest, when I first went out. But I think the fact that we'd done pretty well together in the semi-final helped. You know, so you kind of reflect back, don't you, to good situations that you've been in, and that was obviously pretty recent. Yeah. I remember Blez saying to me that it was a good track, and when you're walking out, that's what you want to hear. Yeah. You know, you don't want to hear that it's a shocker, and you know. Yeah. And obviously we'd bowled on it, and so again, I said earlier about keeping on it. You kind of, I knew it was a good track, and I knew it wasn't doing very very much. And we started well again, and I think it also helps being at home. Whenever you're playing at home, you kind of know where the 1s are, you know where the 2s are, you know where the 3s are. And again, Blez was, you know, really fit at that point, and we ran pretty well early on, and the ball was coming on nice, and we were both, I think, in pretty good form, which obviously helps. It's I don't remember that much about the innings. That I don't know. It was a massive occasion, wasn't it? But I just don't remember that much about it. I remember batting towards the end of the innings where we were nowhere near one. But I remember Blez saying to me, just went to the crease in the middle after the end of an over, and Blez said, "Have you heard that?" And we stopped and listened, because when you're batting, you kind of don't. Yeah. You kind of ignore really what's going on around you, or you try to anyway. You get in a bit of a zone, don't you? And the crowd was so loud; it was electric, and you know the occasion was fantastic, amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to ask about that, Charlie. Because and there is no better way of summing it up other than alcohol. So you've got your crowd going. Everyone is really happy. They bought these tents from Frank where it's, you get 40 cans in your tent for 10 people or whatever, and then they're ordering more, and then there's a fight, then there's a streaker, and things are getting more and more boisterous. The weather affects people. What was it like? I mean, you've just said you are a cool character, Charlie, and you do get yourself in a zone. But yourself, Blez, and for Charlie, is it something that you were buzzing off? Was it something that you felt a bit of pressure, or that, cracker, there's this many people crammed in here? If we don't do this, not that you're going to be in the shit, but if we don't do this, there's going to be a lot of disappointed people. How do you feel about that, Blez?
I think, like Charlie said, you sort of zone out while you're batting. It's strange that you switch on, switch off, between balls, but at the end of the over, you sort of listen to it a little bit. But whilst you're actually concentrating, and you couldn't really hear the crowd, and Peter's played in front of bigger crowds than we've played in front of in test matches, and when you're concentrating, you can't hear the crowd. It's one of those things that it's slightly surreal that all of this stuff's going on, but for that 10 seconds that somebody's running in, you just do not hear you could hear a pin drop in your own mind.
I mean, that's interesting. I'll come on to a few points of what happened with Haslingden and what happened with the crowd and other things. Peter, I mean, I've not asked this question before or anything. Is that right? You're played in front of tens of thousands of people in test matches all over the world. Is that the same for a pro as it is for an amateur?
Yeah, I think so. As Blez said, you just don't. It's probably they call it, you can call it the zone or being in the zone, whatever you want to call it. That's sort of what you're talking about, really. Like I said, you're not at the time. You just don't really realise what's going on around you. And that's just because I guess your level of focus is is so fine. And any batsman will tell you when you are in that zone, so to speak. That's when the game slows down. It seems easy because your concentration levels are just at a real high. So and that's probably the key. Whether it's no matter what level you're playing at, it's can you shut out all those distractions. And play like there's no one watching and it's just in the backyard. When you're really relaxed and can you can you put away those thoughts, which is shit, if I get out here, we might lose, and that's all these people are going to go home disappointed, or whatever it might be. It's the same feeling whether it's an international game or a Worsley Cup final. Because at the time it is you do think it's life and death basically.
And it is, and it's so interesting that the mind can do that when for the right people getting in the right place. I mean, I was going to talk through, Gary. I'll bring you in here. I was going to talk through as the game's progressed and alcohol and sun has kicked in. Can you remember some of the incidents when Haslingden were batting? And there was certainly a lot of gamesmanship going on, and what your thoughts were, because you'd have been halfway down your fourth log of shandy there.
Yeah, probably about that. Maybe third. Don't know. I think there's a bit of a fracas and a bit of verbals with Mickingham, I think, down by scorebox. That got a bit tasty. I think we wanted the sponsors' tents. Obviously, the streaker were another moment. I don't know. I mean, it's we'd never seen anything like it, have we, down at Lowerhouse? Not just the game itself, but just the occasion and that. And it just you do soak it all up as much as we were having a good time ourselves in our tent. And I think just going back to the partnership, Blez and Charlie, it's at the time I don't remember thinking, oh well, that's it. We've lost three top order batsmen for not so much, and we still got to get 230, and it's dark and all that sort of thing. Obviously, because of the semi-final and one or two other times, and Charlie and Blez were having good seasons. You look back in hindsight, and I don't know why we're ever. You're not surprised, are you? Blez speaks for himself, and then Charlie always had that cool temperament. Whenever he's at the crease, you don't think that anything's out of control or I remember his debut against Accrington when he was 15, and it weren't that he got a lot of runs, but Granger were on a tasty wicket, and there were a few verbals flying around, and he just never lost his cool then. Right from that, and so not surprised really in retrospect.
No, of how they've handled it and how they've coped with it. And I mean, the one thing, and it keeps coming back to me, those different memories. I forget the incident where someone's trying to have a go at Mickingham on the edge. And there is no two way. We wouldn't have done this as a team. We would always stick up for each other, don't get me wrong. But they purposely, we were getting on top there. And because there was a bit of a situation, their players, if you remember, went down to almost instigate or continue this involvement in what could have been a handbags at dawn, and Blez and Charlie are stood in the middle on their own. They've done that on purpose, without a doubt. I remember that. And would we have done that because we're not that experienced at trying to change games or influence games without cricket? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm not so sure.
No, I'm not sure. Well, can you remember that, Blez? Did it affect you two at all, or did it just give you a
no?
breather?
Just again, it was like almost on the periphery. We didn't really know what had gone on. I think we had got on top by then. So I think me and Charlie, when we got to the middle, were just saying, "Look, we'll bang on top here. Let's just keep going. Let's just keep concentrating. Let's wait till they're ready. Same with the streaker. It was hilarious, jumping over the stumps and stuff. And that, I think that's part of the time when we said, just have a look round. It's incredible what's here, because that was the first time you'd sort of like come out of yourself a little bit to have 10 minutes relaxing while he was spinning on his head in the middle of the square.
That's right. Yeah, and you've used that to your advantage. You weren't looking then, Joe Martin, were you?
No, I was selling CDs.
Yeah, still selling CDs. Yeah, Dooch, for me and you in the dressing room. Again, you give me your version of it, but I remember at that stage I was pretty nervous, and not in bits, but I was not comfortable of us losing 2 or 3 wickets. I think when Charlie got out, I wasn't comfortable of losing 2 or 3 wickets, then having to all pad up and everything. I just stood outside permanently. What were you doing at that stage when we were looking like we were on top?
Same. I was just buzzing around the changing room, really nervous energy, and I was nervous big time. And it came to the time when I had to get my pads on. And I do remember feeling, very nervous. I can't really remember being nervous too many times in my cricket career, but I definitely were nervous that day. Definitely.
Yeah, it was. I think we all were in there because we knew we were so close and doing so well. So back to you two guys. Yeah, so we've got, you two have put 150 on. You've run them ragged. There's been different incidents in the ground. It's become cloudy. It's clear there's going to be some sort of rain or some sort of problem which might make the umpires take us off. And I'm sorry to have to put you through this, but what was it like then? You've got out, you've been caught. I can't remember where you were caught. Catterall caught you off-deered, and then you're walking off the pitch. How did you feel then?
I was gutted.
I bet.
I remember going off for rain. We went off for rain for a little bit, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. So we went off whilst you two were still in, didn't we?
Yeah. Pretty confident then. I distinctly remember Andy McLeod walking past, and he was obviously going home. He went, make sure you finish it off. And then we went back out, and I think I got out pretty soon after that. Dasher were bowling, and it was pretty dark, to be fair. He bowled a short, wide one that I absolutely nailed.
Yeah.
To point. And I thought, when I hit it, I thought it's gone for 6. But then Catterall came around, decent catch. I was absolutely devastated, to be honest, because how many runs did we need from then?
We'll need a 14 at that stage.
14, but I just, in my mind at that point, me and Blez were going to win the game,
Because you had balls to spare as well, Charlie. And I don't want to bring up bad memories about this, and because obviously you'd celebrate as much as the rest of us. And it is a shame that happened, but you've still got 150 partnership in a final, which is still the record of the biggest gate ever that's been there. So it's a fantastic effort from you two. And you've gone, and you look at it now, it's a piece of piss. We still had, 22 balls left in any event after we'd won it, after you'd got out. But it must have been devastating for you. And it certainly put the shits up me and me and Dooch and a few others.
I was massively confident that obviously the team that went at that year in that game, I was still confident we were going to win. I was just gutted that I'd not seen it through. I still thought we were going to win, Jez.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. You're disappointed that you're having to get someone else to go out there and put up with that pressure. We've done this before, Blez, because you've been on the previous 2004. Fantastic occasion. Your nephew comes out and you win the game, and the rest is history. Has been chaired off the field. You've talked us through all that, Blez. That's fantastic. I'll come back to you in a minute, Blez, just to gather your thoughts if there's anything else you've gone there. How were you feeling then, Peter, about, you're obviously ecstatic and you're so pleased to see all these lads who've played so long for the club. Was that, is that something that's still in your memory and still something that you do treasure?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my main memories, as we got closer to knocking off the runs, I guess I'm not sure if this was the same for everyone else, but it was sort of like, well, I just hope that we can finish the game tonight because there was a bit of talk that we were going to have to come back tomorrow at 5 o'clock or whatever it was and finish the game. And when you think about the whole day, the whole occasion, sort of what it meant to the Lowerhouse club, that would have been that would have been a pretty awful way to have to finish the game. And plus there probably would have been a riot. There probably would have been a riot at the ground that night if they called it off and umpires had come off and said we're coming back. So not often you give credit to the umpires, but they obviously sort of read the mood of the crowd and thought, well, we'll just stay out there. And like I said, I still remember how dark it was. Like the ball was being bowled those last couple of overs, and you couldn't even see it.
No,
and you'd hear the bat on ball, and then
and then you'd wonder where the ball
which fielder was moving, and and I just remember at the end, obviously the scenes of the crowd rung on and. Amazing. From that point on, bit of a blur, but just amazing to see how much joy there was.
Yeah, and you're right what you say about the umpires there, and Chris, I'm sure you'd say the same because Dearden was, he was clearly, and the rest of the Haslingden players just wanted to spoil the party, which we've no problem with. I'm sure we wouldn't have been much different. But he started bowling bouncers at you, Blez, that, to try and get the game called off. But all you were doing, we were flicking him with an open bat over third man. What were your memories around that? And did you ever feel that you weren't going to be able to see it and potentially might get hit? How did you feel about that?
I think, we know from playing T20s in the dark, it's probably the best place to play in the dark is actually batting because you've got the sight screens. You're watching it straight from the bowlers, and so it's, if anything, it's probably the easiest place to be in a dark game. As long as you can pick it up out of his hand, it's fine. So by that time there was no issue batting for me and Charlie. It might have been harder work for somebody to come in. If we'd have needed 20, 30 towards the end, it might have been, very tough. But needing tens with 6 wickets left, I think it was pretty much sorted for us.
Yeah, and also if you'd have got out not long after Charlie, and we would have needed that, extra. What was it, Joe? 14, and then and maybe Ben gets out and Ben bowls, we're all running around the dressing room. It does get a bit frantic then, doesn't it? And the umpire, if the umpires are weak and Mecca's, at that stage, we'd probably have said, no, we'll come back tomorrow. But as it turns out, it all worked out very well. So that, we've got to that point, the presentation's there, and as you say, the rest is history. Gary fell asleep in the gazebo along with quite a few other fans. Remember Ray Clegg off his head on various, what was that big instrument he had?
Didgeridoo.
Yeah, he had a didgeridoo that I think someone had put some wacky in. So he was off his tits for all night. Can you remember anything, Joe, from Joe Martin, from when the game had finished and when you got yourself, we were all celebrating and you're a young kid watching us?
I spent the majority of that time with Corey, I think.
Right.
I can remember when it rained, he ran on to help with the covers. We were 10, right. But I wouldn't go on. I was too scared to go on because I didn't think we were allowed.
Right.
I also think he poured a can of Carling over my head when we won.
That's typical cos, isn't it?
Yeah. I was very little, so I apart from that, I don't think I was in the crowd much. After that, there was a lot of people, and I wouldn't have been able to see anything. I can't see anything now in a crowd. So
no. So Blez, we'll wrap this up shortly. We'll just go around the whole guess around it. There's photos everywhere, whether it's in social media, in the press. That photo of you being chaired off the ground, you look a little bit shell-shocked in the photographs we see. Have you any memory around that, around getting off the field there, and how proud you must have felt?
Yeah, I just wanted to get off, really. I had Kez, Dirks and Tilly sort of lifting me up, and they're not the most trustworthy, so I was
you didn't want to fall.
Quite happy to get off as quick as possible, really.
Yeah.
But I've said it before. It's just like, when we were talking about, how would you wish your final to go? That's your dream scenario, isn't it? It's what you. Yeah. It's it's taking a wicket with the last ball to win the game, isn't it? For a bowler, it's taking a brilliant catch as a wicketkeeper to win the game. As a batter, to be there at the end, for it to be 100, I don't think I'd ever sort of even dreamt that you got 100 to win the game. That not even could, but to be there at the end was just
that's fantastic.
While you were being hoisted aloft, I seem to remember, I think I was talking either Johnny Russell or Dave Worley were in Australia, and I'm actually giving him Johnny, and I'm giving him ball by ball commentary at last 2 or 3 overs sort of thing. And I remember handing you a mobile phone while you're on.
Yeah, I cannot remember that.
That was a sensible conversation at that stage.
I must have been mad actually doing it, but I remember that.
And them days it'd cost you about 150 quid, wouldn't it? On your pay as you go throw
on my Nokia brick.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'll do is I'll go around the whole group that are on here at the moment, just to talk about that, and then I'd like to come back to you, Peter, and just talk about your career. When you've come to the end of your Test career, end of your first class career, and then through to what you're up to now. So, Joe Beneducci, is there anything you'd like to add around the Worsley Cup run that we had there?
No, I think you've covered it pretty well there, Jez.
Yeah,
great day, brilliant day, brilliant year, and in my opinion, played a massive part in setting up what happened the following year as well.
Yeah, I agree. And what's gone on from there. Thanks, Joe. Gary, you've had probably the best seat of all of us, really, when you've watched all the rounds and you've gone up to the final and watched it all there. Anything that you contributed fantastically well for us? Anything you want to add?
No, just brilliant. I mean, like I said earlier on, I'm moving a lot of furniture around at the moment and came across all the merch that the club made thousands out of afterwards as well. Oil paintings and all the framed signed scorecards and match day tickets and things like that. So obviously not just the memories of the day, but the memorabilia afterwards as well.
It's a great point, that, Gary. And we think about Dave Wren and the people who enjoyed that, and we'll still be looking down and listening to these podcasts. That that was for those types of people as well. No, a really good point, that, Gary. Little Joe Martin, you were still toddling around with Carlin dripping off your ears. Anything you want to
add? No, it was just fantastic to get the insight from the players and Gary from that day. So it was
brilliant.
Tremendous.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Joe. Peter, back to you then. Just your final thoughts around that day in August 2004, and then what you went back to New Zealand playing good cricket, still continuing to play Test match and one-day cricket. You retired, I think we said, did you say 2006 you finished Test cricket, the last Test match?
2014. 2014.
2014.
I finished all up playing first class cricket about 2017. I mean, just on the whole, I guess the game, the final, the season. I think I sort of mentioned it before, but I think I think, and you guys would probably know this better than me, but I sort of feel like obviously aside from it being the first Worsley Cup title, I think probably the reason it's so special was because a couple of local lads were the ones that put together the big partnership. And I know it's a team game, and everyone else contributed throughout the season and throughout the cup run and through that game. But yeah, because it was two local guys who sort of were, did the bulk of the work and had that special partnership. That's probably why it's even more special for people like yourselves who are sort of dyed in the wool Lowerhouse people.
That's right.
And that's the beauty of, I guess the beauty of club sport and club cricket, is that it's actually about the people that make up the club. And like I said, always got really, really fond memories of that season. Just the banter that we had in the change room, and you'd walk in the changing room, on a Saturday or Sunday morning, and you'd sort of walk in there, and you just didn't matter who you were, you just wait for it, and sure enough, within about 5 seconds, someone would be having a crack at you, no matter who it was. And, you just have to wait for the next guy to walk in so that he could bear the brunt of all the.
He'd go the next one. Yeah, no, it's perfectly right, and it was such a pleasure having you there, Peter, and you experiencing the first trophy that we've got, and the career that you've had, and it's such a pleasure to play with you. And then you've gone on from there. You've continued. Where I've got the 2006 from, you were the highest New Zealand scorer in a series against Sri Lanka, weren't you? You got. Did you get a couple of hundreds against them? And
I think after that series, I went on a New Zealand A tour of South Africa straight from the UK. I think I might have missed the last game or two of the season. Went over there, went on a tour of South Africa with New Zealand A, and scored quite a few runs, and then sort of got picked for New Zealand sort of the next season. I remember I did 2 tours of England, 2008, 2013. I think 2008 we played at Old Trafford and saw David Wren, and he sort of gave me a bit of a backhanded compliment. He sort of said, I was amazed when I saw your name in the New Zealand team. And
oh, brilliant.
I said, thanks, David. I sort of know. I know what you mean, but But like I said, it's special memories, and then like I said, to come back a couple of times and play in England, and unfortunately never managed to get back to Lowerhouse, but hopefully in the next few years at some stage when the world goes back to something approaching normal life. And, next time I'm over in the UK, then I'll be sure to pop in. Like I said, nice to see some old faces and tell some stories, and sort of know that you're part of the 11 guys that played in the first Worsley Cup win.
First trophy, fantastic, Peter. That is fantastic that you've got those memories of us, and you won't recognise the place now. It's had a lick of paint, and the dressing rooms aren't like a hen hut anymore like they were when we played. These two lads on my top left screen have sorted all that out. So if you get yourself over there, and if any of us are over in New Zealand, I'm sure we'd look you up and Evan. So that really appreciate that. Anything else finally, lads, before I close this down? Any more comments?
Just quickly want to ask, sorry, Jez. Right at the start, when you said that you were playing against England and Jimmy Anderson were giving you a lot of pain, did he reference the Burnley Lowerhouse thing?
Not when he was sledging me, but I talked to him after the series where both teams ended up in the same bar, and he was. So I walked into the toilets, and I was standing there at the urinal, and he walks in after me, and there's just me and him standing there, and so he sort of stands next to you, and as you do when you're in the urinals, you sort of just give a bit of a nod, and there you go. But obviously you don't want to make eye contact or anything like that too much.
No.
But anyway, so he'd said some pretty, I guess, things that you'd probably say are probably crossing the line, but whatever, it's what happens in the heat of the battle. And I sort of said to him, I said, are we all right? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you came pretty hard at me, so I thought maybe I'd done something to, really offend you, or He said, no. He said, I apologise. He said, it's all, I got a bit carried away. I got a bit of white line fever, and he basically sort of completely apologised. And after that, I played him a few times after that, and he never said a bad word to me once. But we went and had a beer, and and he asked me. He said, "Oh yeah, you played at Lowerhouse," and he sort of talked about the rivalry and stuff. And I think I remember one of those games we played them in 2004. I think he came down to watch. So again, that's one of the beauties of club cricket, is that those rivalries, and I'm sure he's probably as much as Lowerhouse got that rivalry internally. I'm sure he's just equally as passionate about it. And but no, he like I said, he's mellowed a bit in the last few years, but fair to say he gave me a fair tongue lashing over the series.
Yeah, cracky. I bet he didn't mention Nicky Orpington for 6, did he? Just have to get that in case he's listening. Brilliant, that. Thanks, Joe. Anyone else? Anything for Peter or for the listeners before we wind this up?
Lindsay asked me, and she said, as far as like Peter had a very successful season, the club had a very successful season. Was there any discussion about returning, Peter? Did you have any?
Good question.
To be fair, I wasn't. I don't think the next season I wasn't planning on coming back to play anywhere in the UK. But I'd never had that conversation with anyone. And then I remember maybe about 2 or 3 weeks before I left. I remember Dave Wren sort of said, something along the lines of sort of, it's been great having you here, but obviously you're not wanting to come back next year, so we'll just sort of leave it at that. Which I don't, like I said, I never told him, but like I said, I think I played probably 6 or 7 years as an overseas. And like I said, I think probably when I look back now, given the team at that time, and the strength of, I guess, and sort of depth of batting, I think probably what the team needed, and whether that was borne out the next season, was they needed someone who was a better bowler, who was going to be more of a strike bowler, because I got quite a few wickets, but it took me a while to get them. I had to bowl a lot of overs to get them. So, like I said, you need on that pitch with the batting depth of the team. I think a pro who was more of a strike bowler was definitely going to fit the bill a lot better, I would have thought. And I suppose whether Ren has always had various pros up his sleeve and was working out what was next, and we were going through that transitional period where the older players were moving on. For example, me, Matt was getting towards the end of there, and then they bring some younger players in to play in the season after. So I wondered who's going to pick up on that. Joe Beneducci didn't pick up on it, did he? So, but we'll leave that to Dooch, whether how good a decision that was. So brilliant, that, lads. Anything else from Gary, Charlie? Charlie, I really appreciate you coming on. I know you enjoyed the podcast, and you're not mad keen on talking about it. You've done fantastically well, and the listeners will absolutely love listening to your way that you saw the cut run going. And the bottom line is, you can't get away from you're the most successful captain ever to captain Lowerhouse. So thanks so much for coming on, Charlie. If there's nothing else from anyone else, we'll close the podcast down. Thanks ever so much to the supporters who are listening to the podcast and are liking it and keep subscribing and passing on the word. We're getting thousands of listens to this now, and we seem to be soaring up whatever the podcast charts are. So thanks everyone for listening, and good night, and see you on the next one.
Gordon, send more house to save the house. Come on, the house!
Fultz, do you remember when we were... what year was the Church Cup final, someone?
2002.
No,
the cup final was
2012.
Oh,
2012.
Yeah.
And I had a massive decision to make, and so we were doing the team selection, and we had to either pick Beneducci or Paddy Martin. So this decision was going on for weeks and weeks, and obviously Joe's my best mate, and Paddy was like the up and coming. So Paddy was the up and coming player at Lowerhouse and the fans' favourite. And I either emailed you or texted you, I can't remember, asking for your advice. I emailed you and Drewy, I think it was, maybe Raza, and you came back to me and said, "Look, mate, just do whatever you think. It's obviously a decision that's gone for weeks and weeks. You've just got to stick with your heart and just go what's right." And obviously, I'm my best mate, but so I don't know if you remember that or not.
Oh, did you
He's
win
not
the game?
bitter
That's the
either.
most important thing.
We won, mate. Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Then it's all's well that ends well, isn't it? That's
Yeah, it's nice to see, though, mate.
You would have never heard the end of it if you hadn't. So
Absolutely not. No. It's been a pleasure. It's been good. It's been good fun, Jez. Jez, thanks very much, Jeff. Having us on.
Would this entice you to do one of your own?
No.
It will. We'll get him on, Joe. Joe, we will. We'll get him on.
He's on the Christmas pod.
Yeah, we'll get him on. Don't worry.
Charlie's greatest run-outs by me. We could do a full episode on it.
Hey,
Fucking
we could
4
actually
hours long.
We could do your run-outs, Blez, actually, because you've run me out a few times as well. When I spiked you in your in your stomach.
You play for 35 years, you're going to have some run-outs.
35?
Charlie, were you the game? We didn't talk about it. The game that I remembered it the other day. There was a game when the tie.
I remember that. Yeah.
Were you playing?
Charlie
that
must
game?
not played.
Frank was wicket keeping, wasn't he?
Yeah, Charlie must not play because Frank
ran two guys out in the last over when they were trying to run a bye off the last ball or the second to last ball.
Was it
that was
Cottam?
Enfield. No, it was Enfield.
At home.
Enfield at home, Jez.
That was one of those games. I think I bowled 25 overs and I couldn't walk the next day.
Oh no!
Who won captain that day?
Joe captain that day. It seems to be his every pro that comes on when Joe was captain seems to do about 25 overs and I can't walk.
Well, now it actually makes sense why that was the difference. That's why in the cup games when Matt was captain, everyone bowled 3 over spells, and when Joe was captain, it was 25.
Yeah.
I only captained about 3 games all year. But I think from memory, Jez didn't either that day, Blez, because I think it was after it was the cup final. So him and Matt, they fucked it off. They had enough. So if Fultz wanted to bowl 25 overs, you'd have been bowling. So obviously Fultz bowled 25 overs.
Fultz, 25 overs, 7 for 65.
Well bowled.
Good lad.
It was.
Inspirational captaincy.
Three run outs.
We played Burnley the next day. And I think we batted first, thank God, and we got quite a big score. And then I bowled about 4 overs, and I said, "Oh no, I think it's going to spin. I think get the spinners on."
Yeah, 3 run outs.
It was a pact between Joe and Dave Wren to convince you that you weren't coming back.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he needed much convincing.
So, do you not think that's incredible that we just won our first trophy? You don't get invited back.
Blez, I asked you this in the middle of the week, didn't I?
I had no idea. Just, obviously it's fine. Then we've already talked about the pros, haven't we? That it was just David's. I don't know.
Yeah.
Talked about it with Gary. Just saying, did you have any input on who the pro was? Well, only after the fact of here's 3 names. What do you think about these? Yeah. Well, I want this one, so
Yeah.
Incredible.
Brilliant.